Hyperrealism is all about showing real life as it truly is, in extreme detail. These artists use paint, pencil, and sculpture to create works that look so real you might mistake them for photos or people standing in front of you. Every mark, wrinkle, and drop of water is made by hand. In 2025, while most of the art market slowed down, these artists kept moving forward. Their work proved that skill, patience, and emotion still have a place in today's world. This is hyperrealism, real art made with real hands. Patricia Piccinini. Patricia Piccinini is an Australian sculptor born in 1965, and she's one of the most fascinating figures in hyperrealist art today. Her work blurs the line between the human and the animal, between what's natural and what's engineered. She builds her sculptures using silicone, fiberglass, and human hair, crafting strange but emotional hybrid beings, creatures that look like they could exist in some near future where science and empathy collide. Piccinini's sculptures often make people stop in their tracks. Some viewers feel disturbed, others feel deeply moved. That's because her art doesn't just imitate life, it questions it. In 2025, while much of the art market was struggling, Patricia Piccinini's work held its value. Collectors who look for emotionally charged and technically brilliant pieces continued to compete for her sculptures. Although many of her sales are private, industry insiders estimate that her major silicone pieces sell between $250,000 and $600,000, depending on size and edition. Smaller works and maquettes can reach around $80,000 to $120,000, with waiting lists at top galleries. Her major exhibition at the National Gallery of Victoria helped strengthen her position even more. Critics called it one of the most significant hyperrealist shows of the year, and attendance numbers proved it. Despite the tougher global art climate, Piccinini's art stood out for its emotional power, technical mastery, and unique imagination. She remains one of the few artists whose market stayed solid through 2025. Tjalf Sparnaay. Tjalf Sparnaay is a Dutch painter born in 1954, and he's one of the leading figures in modern hyperrealism. His art takes the most ordinary things, a fried egg, a hamburger, a sandwich, or a half-peeled orange, and turns them into monumental subjects. He paints them on a massive scale, sometimes several feet wide, so that what's familiar suddenly feels larger than life. His goal is simple but powerful, to show how beauty hides in plain sight. Sparnaay's paintings are incredibly detailed. Every reflection, crumb, and smear of sauce is carefully rendered with oil paint. He calls his approach mega-realism, a term that captures both the scale and the intensity of his work. His still lifes are not nostalgic. They're bold, colorful, and almost cinematic. You can feel the gloss of the ketchup, the softness of the bread, and the sparkle of the silverware. It's food as art, and art as appetite. In 2025, while many painters faced slower sales, Tjalf Sparnaay had one of his best years ever. Collectors continued to chase his large canvases, and his auction record was broken when one of his works, painted in 2012, sold for about $24,000, more than triple its estimate. That result marked a turning point for his market, proving that demand for hyperreal still life remained strong even in tougher times. His gallery pieces typically range from $15,000 to $40,000, depending on size and composition, and larger signature works often sell for higher amounts privately. Jinks. Jinks is one of Australia's most respected hyperrealist sculptors, known for creating figures so lifelike that people often struggle to believe they aren't breathing. Born in 1973, Jinks began his career in the film industry, where he worked on prosthetics and special effects before moving fully into sculpture. That background in realism and anatomy gave him a technical edge, and over time, he's developed a style that mixes extreme precision with quiet, emotional storytelling. Jinks builds his sculptures from silicone, resin, and human hair, layering skin tones, veins, and fine details until the illusion is complete. But what truly makes his work stand out is the emotion beneath the surface. His subjects often look fragile or introspective, a wrinkled woman holding herself in silence, a newborn child, or a man suspended between life and death. Works like The Deposition show how he brings together beauty, mortality, and tenderness in a way that feels both human and spiritual. In 2025, even with the global art market slowing down, Jinks's reputation grew stronger. His exhibitions across Australia and Europe drew packed audiences, and private collectors continued to compete for his rare works. His sculptures are difficult to acquire and even harder to part with, which helps keep his market steady. Recent estimates place his large-scale silicone figures in the range of $180,000 to $400,000, while smaller or limited edition pieces often sell for $60,000 to $120,000 through galleries and private sales. Unlike some artists who rely on spectacle, Jinks focuses on honesty. His work doesn't try to shock, it invites reflection. Ukonu. Oscar Ukonu is a Nigerian hyper-realist artist born in 1993, and he's best known for creating stunning portraits entirely with ballpoint pen. He calls his style Afro-realism, a form of hyperrealism that doesn't just copy reality, but reimagines it through African identity and experience. His works often feature black subjects, drawn in rich tones of blue, black, and purple ink, each line carefully layered to form depth, emotion, and texture. It's a slow, obsessive process that can take up to 400 hours per portrait. Ukonu's art is not just about technical skill, it's about pride and representation. His subjects carry a sense of power and calm, often staring straight at the viewer as if to challenge perception. Every detail, from the glint of light in an eye to the curl of hair, is hand-drawn using simple ballpoint pens. That simplicity is what makes his work so profound. He turns an everyday object into a fine art tool capable of expressing identity and strength. In 2025, Oscar Ukonu's career reached a new level. He co-led a major exhibition in the United States alongside Arinze Stanley, and his works continued to sell out in galleries from Lagos to Los Angeles. Even as the global art market softened, Ukonu's prices climbed slightly, a rare thing that year. His large-scale pen portraits sold for $20,000 to $45,000, while smaller works and commissions ranged from $8,000 to $15,000. Collectors recognized both the technical difficulty and cultural depth of his art. What keeps Ukonu's market strong is authenticity. His work speaks directly to African identity, but the emotions he captures, pride, vulnerability, resilience, are universal. Arinze Stanley. Arinze Stanley is a Nigerian artist born in 1993, and he's one of the most talked about hyperrealist painters of his generation. Using nothing but graphite, charcoal, and sometimes a touch of pastel, he creates portraits so detailed they look like black and white photographs. But beyond technique, it's the emotion in his work that draws people in. His subjects, often everyday Nigerians, carry expressions of strength, pain, hope, and quiet dignity. Through them, Arinze tells stories about identity, justice, and the human spirit. He spends hundreds of hours on each piece, layering pencil strokes until skin, fabric, and even sweat come alive on paper. His drawings explore the complex emotions that come with being human, and particularly what it means to be African in today's world. His art doesn't rely on shock value or decoration. It's honest, intimate, and deeply powerful. In 2025, while global art sales dropped, Arinze Stanley's market value went the other way. He co-led a major exhibition in Los Angeles and continued to show internationally, gaining even more attention from collectors. Private buyers competed for his original works. Limited edition prints also sold out quickly through galleries. Arinze's market resilience comes down to authenticity. His work connects emotionally in a way that few artists manage. Even in a year when big auction houses struggled, collectors were still waiting months for a chance to acquire his new drawings. Mueck. Mueck is one of the biggest names in hyper-realist sculpture. Born in 1958 in the United Kingdom and raised in Australia, he started his career making puppets and special effects before turning to fine art in the 1990s. That background shows in his work. Every sculpture he makes is so real it almost feels alive. His figures can be as small as a newborn baby that fits in your hand, or as large as a 15-foot giant crouched in silence. Mueck's process is slow and meticulous. He sculpts with silicone, resin, and fiberglass, then paints each piece by hand, adding every hair, vein, and wrinkle. His subjects are usually ordinary people caught in quiet human moments, sleeping, sitting, or simply existing. But the way he changes their scale makes you see humanity from a new angle. The result is often unsettling, but deeply emotional. In 2025, while the global art market faced one of its hardest years in a decade, Ron Mueck's work kept rising in value. Collectors and institutions still competed for his rare sculptures, and his name alone guaranteed attention. One of his large baby sculptures was listed in a major New York auction with an estimated value between $1.8 million and $3 million, a figure that reflects just how strong his market remains. Smaller works like busts or partial figures typically sell privately for $400,000 to $800,000 USD, depending on their size and edition. What makes Mueck's market so stable is more than just realism, it's emotion. His art speaks to something universal: fragility, isolation, and wonder. Even as many artists saw declining demand in 2025, Mueck's sculptures continued to find buyers and museum attention worldwide. His uncanny ability to turn human vulnerability into timeless sculpture keeps him at the very top of the hyperrealist world. Carole A. Feuerman. Carole A. Feuerman is one of the true pioneers of hyperrealist sculpture. Born in 1945 in the United States, she helped define the movement with her lifelike swimmers and bathers, sculptures that seem to capture the calm just after a deep breath. Working with resin, fiberglass, and bronze, she creates figures that glisten with water droplets and sunlight, frozen in moments of quiet reflection. Her art celebrates strength, serenity, and beauty, often using the swimmer as a symbol of balance and endurance. Feuerman's work is instantly recognizable. Her bronzed swimmers, often life-size or monumental, stand in museums, parks, and collections all over the world. Every detail, from the smooth curve of skin to the tiny beads of water resting on a shoulder, shows her mastery of texture and realism. She's one of the few sculptors who can make bronze look like living flesh, turning a static figure into something that feels alive. In 2025, her long and successful career reached another milestone with a major retrospective in Rome titled The Voice of the Body. The show presented over 50 works spanning 5 decades, reminding the art world how influential she's been. Even though the wider market slowed down, her sculptures continued to sell through top galleries and private deals. Her large-scale resin figures typically sell for $250,000 to $500,000, while smaller editions and bronze works range from $80,000 to $150,000. Collectors value her art not only for its realism, but also for its timeless calm. While many artists struggle to find stability in 2025, Carole Feuerman's market remains solid, supported by institutions and private collectors who see her as a cornerstone of hyperrealism. Duane Hanson. Duane Hanson was an American sculptor born in 1925, and he changed the way people looked at realism in art. Long before hyperrealism became a movement, Hanson was already making it real, literally. He built life-size figures of ordinary people, tourists with cameras, waitresses on their lunch break, construction workers, and old men sitting quietly on benches. His sculptures were so detailed that, at first glance, you might think they're real people standing in a gallery. Hanson used fiberglass and polyester resin, painting every wrinkle, stain, and strand of hair by hand. His subjects weren't glamorous or idealized. They were everyday Americans, tired, proud, funny, and human. Through that honesty, Hanson turned the mundane into something deeply powerful. He showed that art could tell the truth about who we really are. Even decades after his death in 1996, Hanson's influence still defines hyperrealism. His works remain in top museums and continue to appear in major auctions. In 2025, when the broader art market struggled, Hanson's pieces actually gained momentum. Collectors and institutions were still willing to pay strong prices for his figures. Smaller resin works and studies sold for around $120,000 to $180,000, while his full-scale fiberglass sculptures often fetched $250,000 to $500,000, depending on the subject and condition. Some museum-quality pieces have even reached over $700,000 in private sales. The continued demand for Duane Hanson's art shows how timeless his vision is. His sculptures aren't just realistic, they're relatable. They capture the quiet dignity of everyday people in a way that never fades. Pedro Campos. Pedro Campos is a Spanish painter born in 1966, known for his crisp, hyper-realist still lifes that transform everyday objects into dazzling icons. His paintings often feature glass bottles, polished marbles, wrapped fruits, or soda cans. all painted with such precision that they almost shine like photographs. Campos's work bridges the gap between classical technique and pop culture, combining the realism of the old masters with the visual punch of Warhol and Lichtenstein. He paints with oils on canvas, using traditional layering methods to create surfaces that are smooth, reflective, and full of light. Every reflection, shadow, and glimmer is carefully planned. His paintings celebrate ordinary beauty, the kind of beauty that hides in packaging, plastic, and glass. They're bright, joyful, and exacting, reminding viewers that perfection can exist in the most common things. In 2025, when much of the art market slowed down, Pedro Campos's work remained stable and in demand. His solo show in London drew large crowds, and collectors continued to seek his larger canvases. Though he doesn't often appear in major auctions, his gallery sales stayed strong, proving that steady craftsmanship still attracts loyal buyers. His small to mid-size paintings usually sell between $25,000 and $45,000, while large-scale or commissioned pieces can reach $70,000 to $90,000 depending on complexity. Campos's success lies in consistency. He doesn't chase trends, he refines perfection. His paintings reflect both modern consumer life and timeless technique. In 2025, that balance helped him stand out. While others struggled with fluctuating values, Campos's work remained a safe and admired investment, keeping his place among Europe's top hyperrealist painters. Chuck Close. Chuck Close was one of America's most important painters, a pioneer of modern photorealism whose work changed the way portraiture is understood. Born in 1940, Close became famous for his enormous portraits that looked like giant photographs but were made entirely by hand. He built his images using a grid system, painting tiny abstract marks that come together to form faces when viewed from a distance. His subjects were often friends, family, and fellow artists, ordinary people elevated into monumental icons. In 1988, a spinal artery collapse left Close paralyzed, but he continued painting using a special setup that allowed him to work from his wheelchair. That resilience only added to his legend. His technique evolved too, from the smooth realism of his early works to the later colorful, pixel-like portraits that mixed precision with abstraction. Every piece reflected discipline, innovation, and humanity. Even after his passing in 2021, Chuck Close's influence and market strength have remained solid. By 2025, his works were still considered blue-chip assets, collected by top museums and serious private buyers. His large-scale portraits often sold in the $1 million to $5 million, depending on size, medium, and provenance. Smaller works, such as prints and studies, regularly fetched $80,000 to $300,000 at auction. In 2022, one of his final paintings sold for about $4.8 million, reaffirming his market stability. While the art market as a whole dipped in 2025, Close's work continued to command strong prices. Collectors see him not just as a photorealist, but as a master of endurance and technique. His portraits, calm, monumental, and deeply human, remain a cornerstone of contemporary art, ensuring that Chuck Close's legacy and market will continue to endure for years to come.